It used to be that calling a film a turkey was an insult. Nowadays, there's actually an audience for some of the worst movies ever made.
Baby, you are gonna go broke showing turkeys like these.
Now we're talking turkey.
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker.
It's turkey time. Gobble, gobble.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Let's Talk Turkeys. I'm Movie Miss, and I'm joined today by my co-host, as always, Miss Nikki Flicks. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, and thank you very much.
Today, we are discussing in our Friday Fun series for cult classics, the 2002/3 movie, Bubba Ho-Tep.
King of rock and roll to this old guy in a rest home.
You were an Elvis impersonator. You fell off a stage and broke your hip? What was it? 20 years ago.
That's where they took a piece of my brain. I got a little bag of sand up there now. Jack, President Kennedy was a white man. They dyed me this color. What we have here at Shady Rest is an Egyptian soul sucker of some sort. Some kind of Bubba Ho-Tep. You know, a mummy hiding out, feeding on the sleeping. He can just keep on feeding unless he's finally destroyed. All right, man, let's go. Don't make me use my stuff on you, baby.
Now we're discussing this one. It's not a turkey. It is actually certified fresh. Rotten Tomatoes score critics of 79 and audience of 79. But like I said, it's for our cult classic series. I've been obsessed with this movie since I saw it when it had just been hot off the festival circuit. I saw it on the big screen and I've been obsessed with it ever since. What are your thoughts? Was this your first time viewing? Have you seen it before?
Oh, I've seen it before. Number one, Bruce Campbell. Literally anything the man sneezes on, I'm here for it and I will see it. And then also, I'm a big fan of the filmmaker because I'm obsessed with the Phantasm movies, all of them. Like the more low budget and wacky they got, the more I was here for them. So knowing it's that filmmaker plus Bruce Campbell, I was here for it. I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times.
So the movie runs 92 minutes. It had a budget of $1 million, which, you know, like you said, low budget. And on the commentary, he noted that that was extremely low. They did 1.2 box office. However, they spent a year with 32 prints going around to all the festivals drumming up interest in this, which I think was so smart. The director, Don Coscarelli, as you mentioned, is the creator of the Phantasm series. Like you, I'm obsessed. In fact, I just got the Steelbook Phantasm and the DVD set of all the films and watched them last week just to get hyped for this.
All of them? You went through all of them in a week?
All of them.
Nice.
And I'm obsessed. I love this filmmaker because like you said, it's low budget, but you gotta love it. He does it in such a way that it's amazing.
I agree with you. Yep.
So Bubba Ho-Tep was written by Don Coscarelli based on a short story called Bubba Ho-Tep by Joe R. Lansdale, which was included in an anthology book of short stories. I have to say, it works. It was a short story, but it works as a feature film. There's just enough material there to stretch it and make it interesting.
Agreed, because they have a lot of fun with going with the flashbacks, particularly with Elvis/Sebastian. They fill in what isn't there in the short story with that stuff, and that works.
So being low budget, they had 30 days to shoot this film in Southern California. They used an abandoned hospital lot that they were fortunate enough to find. And yeah, there you have it. That's all the information I have on it. Top cast build is Bruce Campbell, Ossie Davis, Bob Ivy, and Ella Joyce. So Bruce Campbell, a god to horror and indie movie fans alike. Obsessed with him. I saw he was going to be in this and freaked out. So of course I wanted to see it. Ossie Davis, as Jack. I'm going to say, I laughed when I heard that his people that manage him, his agent and stuff, got the script and laughed and went, "What the hell is this?" Especially when he said he wanted to go ahead and do it. I can't imagine anybody else doing this role.
He's absolutely incredible. That's really what makes this movie is the performance from Ossie Davis and Bruce Campbell, those performances, the way that they're taking what they're doing incredibly seriously, and they're putting so much skill and heart and realness into the characters that it elevates so far beyond the material and so far beyond how wacky the idea is. You forget you're not watching like a serious dramatic piece at times because of how good both of them are. I love it. And it was such a smart decision for Ossie Davis to do this film. Absolutely.
So the IMDb plot, spoilers ahead, y'all, like there always is, but this is terrible, this one.
Oh boy, here we go.
Elvis Presley and a Black JFK, in quotes, stay in a nursing home where nothing happens until a wayward Egyptian mummy comes and sucks out the old people's souls through their assholes. The two decide they're going to fight back.
Bro,
I even watched the movie.
You're fired. Like this is the worst of the hacks material. I'm putting it out there. You not only mangled the plot, you gave spoilers and divulged way too much info. Are you trying to ruin the movie? Oh my God. Yeah. Go away, bro. Get out of here. Where's the other guy? Where's the non-hack? Ugh.
Hopefully he'll be up for our next one.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
So Bubba Ho-Tep opens with some definitions on the screen. The first one is Ho-Tep, meaning a relative or descendant of the 17th dynasty Egyptian. Number 2 is the family surname of an Egyptian pharaoh. Then we get the definition of the word Bubba. This makes me laugh. Male from the southern US, good old boy, cracker, redneck, trailer park resident.
Accurate.
Then we get the title card, boom, Bubba Ho-Tep. And you're like, what the hell am I about to watch?
Yeah, these are two things that clearly should not go together.
Ever.
I'm so confused right now. And that's pretty much how the movie makes you feel the entire time.
So we get a black and white, old school, educational style film like you would see when you're in grade school. And I think it's in German, showing a mummy in the Ho-Tep dynasty of over 4,000 years old. And he will be soon touring the world. So then we cut to a lazy day in Mud Creek, Texas, present day. Inside of a rest home, we see two men sleeping, and we zoom in closer on one of the men, and in voiceover, he tells us he was dreaming about the infection on his penis again. I didn't even say the rest of it with a straight face. He lies there drifting in and out of sleep, where we see nurses and other people coming in and out of the room in a really interesting way. The visual direction on this, the way they cut this scene of him dozing.
Yes. Thank you, Dawn. The director and screenwriter, you know, he's most known for the Phantasm movies. He just has a knack for coming up with these really bizarre and interesting ways to visualize things. Like he has such an interesting artistic eye, I think is the best way to describe it. That is such a cool way to show you visually how everything blends together. Time passes in these weird ways when you're in the situation that Mr. Bruce Campbell's in, laying there in that bed. Like it makes you feel really uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what it's supposed to do. And it works.
So the man in the bed next to him has a coughing fit, and we get more voiceover where we basically get the gist that this man's life has not gone the way that he has planned. He asks in voiceover if his ex-wife Priscilla, if she discovered he was alive, would she come visit him? He ponders if there's anything more to life other than food, shit, and sex. Been there.
Right? Oh, I love like with that kind of stuff that he's thinking, that he's saying, you're really starting to feel like that is Elvis. And if Elvis was alive, that's exactly what he would be thinking. and how he would be thinking it. Like immediately you're getting this like weird level of Academy Award worthy depth from Bruce Campbell. Even in just this simple little voiceover, you're getting like, oh my God, he's so method. He is Elvis. This is crazy right now, because you weren't expecting that.
No, and you get the gist of all this because he references himself as king of rock and roll. He talks about Priscilla, and he clearly looks like an aged Elvis in this scene. So you're like, oh my God, what if he was alive in an arrest home?
Right.
He does that lip, the signature Elvis lip, into a mirror, and he remembers being on stage in a brief flashback. And I love it because he's got the moves. It's so fun.
It's crazy. And one of the things that I dislike about watching this movie is Bruce Campbell is so amazing. He's so incredibly good that you almost at certain points wish this was just a biopic with Bruce Campbell as Elvis, because he's that amazing. Like, this is the best performance of Elvis, right up there with Kurt Russell. Like, this is so good. I kind of wish that was the movie. It's that good.
Right? I know. So he ponders some more about that growth on his pecker, as he calls it.
I was going to say, I think the way he refers to it is the growth on his pecker.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And like you said, he gives such a straight performance that you can't help but chuckle because you're like, ooh, that sucks. So he talks about it possibly being cancer. And then the man next to him starts to yell in pain and gasp and reaches out toward Elvis and then dies right there in the bed. That scene always gets me. That's tough.
This is what I'm saying. Like, so with this director, Don Coscarelli, with his work, you tend to get this level of depth and seriousness. And suddenly you're like, whoa, emotionally, I'm 100% invested here.
That you don't expect in a B movie.
Silly little B-rate movie. And then there's these moments where you're like, this is breaking my heart. And that's one of them. You're just like so sympathetic right now to what it feels like to be in that type of position and to watch someone die like that. And this is like happens on the daily to people who are in homes like that. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm kind of heartbroken. I don't even know that guy. And I'm kind of heartbroken over it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Kudos to the filmmaker for that.
So next we get a quick scene of two men carrying a body out the front door and loading it into a hearse. And we assume it's that man. And these two chuckleheads, they get a few little choice scenes, and they make the most of their screen time.
Yes, they do.
It's Daniel Roebuck and Daniel Schweiger. And man, are they funny.
I recognize Daniel Roebuck. He's quite the character actor, and I've seen him in about 1,000 different things. So yeah, I recognize both of their faces. But yeah, that's another thing where it's like, that's a signature Don Coscarelli move, is to have brilliant character actors and like a running gag that doesn't get old. And they're not appearing very often, but when they do, they make the most of their screen time. That's a theme with his work.
Back inside, we see an elderly woman with a cane going down this, and I'm going to just say this right now. This set, what he did with what he had to work with, it's shot so perfectly. The halls of this place look so barren and gloomy and like it's falling apart, and ambiance, you feel for these people, like how sad of an environment. He's painted a beautiful picture for that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The man chooses the right people to work with when it comes to set design, lighting, cinematography. Everything is always perfectly representative of his artistic vision. And he has a way of setting a mood visually in the location and the set design, the lighting, all of it. In all of his work, I'm always impressed by that. And this movie is definitely right up there. But this bitch roaming the halls with her cane.
So she passes by another woman in an iron lung with just her little head sticking out, this sweet Golden Girls looking little lady. And she strokes the lady's hair and makes a sweet little noise like, oh, at her, and then steals her glasses right off her face.
This bitch a klepto. Like, what?
Yes, in one of the deleted scenes, you can see she has a drawer full of shit she's stolen from people.
Oh yeah, you get the idea even without the deleted scene. It's insane, but it's like, you know what? People who are elderly and are on the decline and are in rest homes, they're not always good people. Sometimes they're shitty people who are kleptomaniacs, and you have nothing else to do. You got to get your kick somehow. Of course, there's going to be drama.
Well, she goes down the hall and she steals a tin of candy that's clearly sitting there meant for somebody else as well.
Yeah, this bitch, are you serious right now? You know,
So
she got the diabetes. She can't even eat that candy. Like, what the hell? It's just for the sake of stealing shit. This lady.
So later in bed, she's munching on some of those stolen candies, like maybe she shouldn't be. She gets attacked by a giant bug. And I wanted to ask you, is that supposed to be like a scarab? Because she calls it a cockroach.
It's like a gigantic cockroach on steroids. It's a scarab. Yeah.
So she falls out of bed trying to kill this bug that's attacking her. And she looks up and sees in the shadows, we get our first look at sort of a mummy, it looks like, standing in the corner in her room. We're not quite sure what we're seeing, but we're pretty sure it's a mummy.
It's so bizarre. This is like yet another signature move by the director, which is to give you something that is equal parts bizarre and sort of Evil Dead funny, as well as that shit looks scary, and then ride that line between both. The scarab, the cockroach, this whole thing is a perfect example. I am so freaked out and uncomfortable, and like I get itchy and it just weirds me out. I mean, I live in a desert climate, so cockroaches are the real tea down here sometimes, especially when you're outside, to see one fly by and you're like, yeah, shit. This grosses me out so much. And you're laughing and thinking, yeah, this bitch is getting what she deserves here, but then you're also kind of freaked out and looking behind you to make sure there isn't one creeping up. It's just, ugh, gross.
And then the director adds to the creep factor because we cut to Elvis's room where he's kind of in that half awake, half sleepy state with the quick cutting. And he thinks he sees that woman on the floor outside his room, grabbing the door, going, help me. And she gets dragged away.
It is so unsettling.
It really is.
It's really unsettling to see that woman on the floor like that. And then it's like, you see it from his perspective where it's like, I don't know if I'm hallucinating, if I'm dreaming. Am I seeing things? Is that really happening? I don't even know what day it is.
So the next morning, those same two men are taking another body bag out to the hearse once again. And then some more time passes in that awesome visualistic choppy way again in Elvis's room. He finally wakes up to find a young woman in there going through the personal effects of the man who has passed away, his roommate. And this actress is playing Callie. Her name is Heidi Marnhout. So in this scene, he asks that girl, after she's getting ready to throw some stuff in the trash, if he can have a photo of his former roommate and the Purple Heart and maybe some candy. And it breaks my heart, like you said, when he's laying there looking at that Purple Heart and he's thinking, this is all that's left in the world of this man, and this girl couldn't give two shits.
Yeah. And you're thinking already at this point, if that is in fact Elvis, or at least the poor man is so deluded he thinks he's Elvis and he legit believes it. He's looking at this girl and thinking about his own daughter and how little he has left behind and how few memories there are. And would she just come in and start throwing away everything that ever meant anything to him? The whole thing is really sad and very real. Like suddenly you're like, okay, we just had this moment with this giant fucking scarab and the old lady and then the two clowns taking her body out. And now all of a sudden we're back to, I'm feeling kind of heartbroken and sad right now.
Yeah, agreed. So he tells her, you could have come to visit him because they don't charge you for that, kind of guilting her for not ever visiting her dad, and wonders if his daughter would visit him if she knew he was alive, like you said. So then the nurse enters, played by Miss Ella Joyce, who I remember from the comedy show Rock.
I was going to say, I totally remember her from more than anything as the wife on Rock, because I loved that show.
She's amazing in this, first of all. So, okay, she enters and she asks Mr. Half. They call Elvis Sebastian Half because that was his name upon admission to the home. How's he doing today? And he tells her he doesn't go by Sebastian Half anymore. Call him Elvis or Mr. Presley. So that girl Callie's still in there, and she and the nurse are talking, and the nurse jokes that he's not Elvis. Elvis is dead, and Mr. Half, you know that. And I like how he says, hell no, I ain't dead. He's like so offended.
Yeah, like he's really living and breathing in the skin of this man. And it's a credit to his acting, even though with that tiny budget, the makeup on Bruce Campbell is awful. And when they do close-ups of his face, it's incredibly distracting. It's as distracting as the growth on his pecker is to him, right? Like that makeup's actually pretty terrible. And it's not a fault of the filmmakers. It's just incredibly low budget. The fact that he acts his ass off through that terrible makeup and you are still believing it.
Yes.
I hate in this scene the way that the nurse and that girl are speaking about him as if he's not there and as if he can't hear them. And that's one of those things that pisses me off and gets at my heart. And I'm like, this movie shouldn't be doing this. It's supposed to be a silly, stupid movie about a mummy. And I'm like genuinely getting emotional over this stuff.
So the nurse is speaking, and we learn from her, Mr. Half was an Elvis impersonator. And about 20 years ago, he fell off stage and broke a hip. It got infected, and he was in a coma for quite a while. So the young woman asks, why would you want to be somebody else if you're not Sebastian? And Elvis says he was hooked on pills and tired of it, and he just wanted out. He just wanted to switch lives and not be the famous Elvis Presley anymore. So he found an Elvis impersonator that was really good, Sebastian Half, and he switched places. But unfortunately, Mr. Half had a bad heart and he liked drugs too. So he died. We get a fun flashback scene of Elvis and his crew meeting with Sebastian Half. And I love that we get that slow-mo walk of the crew as they exit the car.
Yes. And this is what I'm saying is in this like first real full-on flashback of him living and breathing, walking around in the world as Elvis. It's one of those moments that kind of makes me go, I sort of wish this was just a biopic starring Bruce Campbell as Elvis, because this is amazing.
Agreed. He says that he managed to save some money for himself to set out and make a new life. And he adds that if he was ever wanting to trade back lives, he could, because it was in the contract that he had had with Sebastian. Unfortunately, it blew up in a barbecue accident. And then we see from the flashback of the trailer park exploding.
I love it. And I love how it's like, this is so cockamamie and out there. And it clearly could be taken as this guy is deluded. He once had an infection and was in a coma, and he's made all this crazy nonsense up. But
yes,
it also explains everything perfectly if he really is Elvis. And it's a little bit plausible. He was having himself kind of a bit of a Free Britney moment back in his day where he wanted out of being Elvis. And you understand that. You're like, that actually makes sense. The barbecue thing, oh my God, it makes me laugh so hard every time because I forget that they actually show you.
Yes.
Freaking trailer park blowing up.
And what made it more impressive to me was learning in the behind the scenes that they had one take, one shot to do it and do it right. And Bruce Campbell actually really was there when it blew up and was close enough that he could have been injured had something gone wrong. So God bless him for that, because that scene's amazing.
Guerrilla style, low budget filmmaking often puts you in those situations.
So the nurse tells him while he's talking about all this, he needs to reel it back in before he gets out there too far and doesn't come back. And he goes, oh, fuck you. And then the ladies laugh at him. That makes me so sad.
Yeah, I know. Like, so much of this movie actually hurts my heart because I'm so loving his performance. And then eventually we get Ossie Davis as Jack. Like, I love them both so much. And they both just have me hook, line, and sinker. I'm feeling everything. And this is a thing that like, it always gets at my heart when I see elderly people who are being discounted, you know,
I can't believe you just said that.
Tucked
I
away.
was literally thinking the word discarded.
Yeah, it's something that's like it triggers me and upsets me very much, always, all the time. So this movie just has a way of making me laugh, giving me horror goodness that makes me cheer, and then also breaking my heart. I'm so all over the place with this movie.
But you can see why it's a cult classic, because it has all the different elements.
It's such a bizarre cocktail that it's for a distinct palate.
Yes.
That's a perfect description, I think, of what makes this movie great.
So in voiceover, we get some more of Elvis saying that nobody in this place listens to him except this one guy, but he's certifiable. And then we cut to Elvis and an elderly Black man sitting outside in the yard, and that's Ossie Davis. They're sitting together where the man starts to tell Elvis that a piece of his brain is back in a jar in DC because the government took it and they put a bag of sand up there instead.
He's got the scar to prove it.
Wasn't that crazy? So Elvis calls him Jack and says, you know, President Kennedy was a white man. And Jack says, that's how clever they are. They dyed me this color.
Oh my God.
And It's so fucking good.
I love it so much. It's insane the way that you're in Elvis's head. We're in Sebastian's head, hearing his thoughts, and we're seeing Jack from Elvis's perspective. And he's looking at him and going, that's insane. Everything you're coming up with to describe and to support the fact that you're actually JFK sounds absurd. And not for one moment does it register in his brain that that's how people see him. Oh no, because he really is Elvis.
So that night, as Elvis sleeps, he dreams of a time he was performing and fell off the stage. He wakes up after relieving himself in the John. He gets attacked by the giant bug in his room. He beats it by trapping it in a bedpan against the wall. And this is where you get this Evil Dead comedy that he's so good at, because he fights with this thing and then he stabs it with a fork and shoves it onto this heating lamp that's fallen on the floor and scorches it. It's so Evil Dead-ish to me. It's ridiculous.
It's like slapsticky.
Yes,
and
I
this is why you have to have Bruce Campbell. It's because he is the only actor on earth who could convincingly portray elderly Elvis, who swapped places with an impersonator and is now going toe to toe with a giant cockroach. Like, who can pull that off? Bruce Campbell. No one else.
Agreed. So then he goes roaming the halls and he winds up in Jack's room. And I like that we get this really cool quick cut way of showing us all the different things in the room. And it looks like the room itself is staged like a presidential bedroom compared to the other room that Sebastian is in, or Elvis is in.
His room looks like it's straight out of the White House. Yeah, it looks like a super expensive hotel suite.
Yes. And like, he's got a little model of like the day in Dallas with the car. I can't even talk about it.
Again, with the director, he has this brilliant way of doing quick cuts, quick shots of things to kind of show you what's around a space, so you get a sense of a personality in the shots. And it worked in the cockroach scene with Elvis, and now it works beautifully in this room. And yeah, when you're seeing how he has like everything set up with the little miniatures so that he can kind of, you know, like
and pictures of like Jack Ruby and everybody on the wall.
Lee Harvey Oswald, like is he crazy and obsessed, or has he been trying to put the pieces together and investigate his own assassination? I don't understand. But this room, you're looking around at it and going, now hold on a minute, how come he gets this kind of treatment and he has this kind of room when we've seen how everyone else in this place lives? Is he actually JFK? Question mark. Like, wait, what? Either that or he's just an incredibly rich man with a money-loaded family. They put him up in style, but it's like, hold on, something's not right here. And it makes you go, he is JFK. I know it. He's telling the truth.
So Elvis finds Jack lying on the floor face down, and that's where he kind of peeks and sees that scar on the back of his head, like you said. He wakes him up and they discuss that they saw something in the halls. Jack says something's going on. In the next scene, Elvis is telling an administrator that works for the facility, played by another Coscarelli face you might recognize, Mr. Reggie Bannister.
I am so obsessed with Reggie Bannister.
I'm obsessed with his hair.
Or lack thereof.
He's way got he the just cul-de-sac mullet
makes it work. Yes, he's my favorite part of the original Phantasm movie. And then as they went on, the way they turned him into an Ash-esque anti-hero character, and you don't expect that. I love me some Reggie Bannister. Anytime I see him in anything, I get very, very excited.
So Elvis tells him they have a bug problem and they better get on it. He tells Elvis they'll call an exterminator and leaves. And I like how Elvis gives him a thank you very much.
Yeah, the way that he slips in these little Elvisisms. My favorite one in the entire movie, and there's so many, is when he's describing the bugs to Reggie. He tells him it was as big as his hand. It was the same size as a peanut butter and banana sandwich. The way that he just effortlessly slips that into the dialogue.
Yeah,
it's probably a choice from Bruce Campbell to do that as much as he does, and it's so smart because he just does it and moves straight on to the next line of dialogue, and it's like you wouldn't even notice it if you're not really paying attention. I laugh so hard every time he's looking at his hand and going, it's the same size as a peanut butter and banana sandwich. Like, hello, we'll call the exterminator. Thank you very much. Like, oh my God, Bruce Campbell, you are the best.
So the next day, the nurse comes in and puts some cream on Elvis's pecker, which just looks like a big blob of Vaseline, and the noise that it makes, I'm like, ew.
It's disgusting.
It's so good. So he starts thinking about all the strange goings on lately, and he suddenly gets a boner, and he's pleasantly surprised because he doesn't think he can get them anymore. And I love her reaction to this. It's so fabulous. So later at dinner, Elvis's friend, Kimosabi, dressed as the Lone Ranger, rants about an ambush from under the bridge, and he's playing with his little toy guns, and he's got the mask on. I love Kimosabi. And Elvis and Jack give each other this knowing glance, like they know something's going down. So later, Jack startles Elvis when he wakes him up saying that he was wrong about Lyndon Johnson trying to assassinate him, that something else is going on around here.
Yes.
They have a heart-to-heart where Jack says he knows he's really Elvis, and Elvis says he had nothing to do with the incident in Dallas. So they decide to be BFFs. So Jack takes Elvis, and I love that Jack's wearing his PJs, but he put a jacket on over it, like a suit jacket.
Yes.
They go to the restroom where Jack shows Elvis some hieroglyphs that are carved into the wall of a stall. Jack says it loosely translates.
This kills me. This makes me laugh so goddamn hard.
It translates to Pharaoh gobbles donkey goobers. And the second line says, Cleopatra does the nasty. Jack tells Elvis that this thing was in his room last night, and that's what happened to him and why he was lying on the floor.
I love the fact that this mummy thing would take the time to go into the bathroom and write the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic version of Tracy Zaho on a bathroom stall. Like, that is so absurd.
So I like how in this scene too, Elvis is like, what do you mean he had his mouth on your ass? Are you saying he's a shit eater or something like that? And he has to explain to him, I think he's sucking out the souls. And they want to try and figure out why this soul sucker thing is there and why he's going in the bathroom. It's so ridiculous. So outside, the nurse is on a smoke break. She sees lights flickering in the work shed, and she goes inside instead of investigating, which I was glad, because then we see a pair of cowboy boots exiting the shed and that really cool, ominous music that's associated with the mummy in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think the music in this movie is spot on.
Wonderful. And I didn't look up who did the score, but this wonderfully sad music that happens when we're like in Elvis's thoughts. There's this really sad 50s, 60s-esque guitar thing that happens, and it just breaks your heart. The music makes you so sad, and it makes you feel what he's feeling. And then with the music that goes with the monster, again, it's like the character is in the music. I love that. It's really well done in this movie.
So back inside, we see Jack and Elvis reading about this creature in a book that Jack has. I like how Jack is like getting some snacks out and he's all, do you want some ding dongs? I've got some baby Ruths. And then he goes, let's get decadent. It's such a silly little thing, but it's the way he says it. I laugh every time.
Mm-hmm.
He's so cute. It's like, I want you to be my grandpa. So they have some snacks and they decide that they have an Egyptian soul sucker at their rest home. That's what they land on. And then we cut over to Kimosabi's room, and the soul sucker is attacking his roommate. And he lays there with those little toy guns and just pow, 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 is going to shoot at him. It's a very creepy scene with that tone over it of menacing, like, and sadness. Like, don't get Kimosabi. You know, what are you doing?
I know. It's so sad. It's so weird because like you're seeing the creature and you're thinking, okay, I see that the entire makeup budget went to that. And that's why Bruce Campbell looks bad.
Oh, he looks amazing.
That looks incredible. And then at the same time, you're freaked out and you're scared, but then you're also sad because you realize that poor old Kimosabi, all he can do to defend himself is pull out his little toy guns, and like the whole thing's like a metaphor for how helpless these people are when they're stuck in a place like that and no one takes anything they say seriously. Like, oh my God, I'm so conflicted. I'm scared and I'm sad and oh.
So back with Jack and Elvis, they're still discussing what they think is happening when they hear some noises. So they go out in the hall to investigate. Elvis sticks his head out and he sees the mummy at the end of the hall heading their way. And visually, beautiful scene. The lights, the music, everything. And then when the mummy's walking down the hall, he stops at the doorway where Elvis is because he's leaned back in, and the mummy and Elvis make eye contact. And for a second, you don't know what's going to happen. You're like, oh, but then we get this
Yeah.
really cool scene of the, I don't know if he's telling him like telepathically what has happened to him, the mummy, but we get the flashback of how he came to be, who he
Yes.
was in Egypt and everything that happened and the traveling on the bus and crashing. It's so great, that scene.
Yep, the whole thing. And it's like, okay, if anyone can work a hallway, it's Don Coscarelli, right? Like he knows how to make space scary, how to make a creature in this space terrifying. And that's exactly what happens. And I love how they're giving you the explanation of what the mummy is visually by having him translate his thoughts telepathically to Elvis. Like you see that they're 100% correct. And this is exactly how it went down, but we're going to visualize all of it instead of it being a story somebody reads. I love that choice to do that.
So Jack and Elvis see the mummy pass. So he, after the connection there, the mummy keeps going and he goes right out the front door as Kimosabi enters the hall and is shooting his little toy guns. It's sad, but it's also funny because he's got the hat and mask and his guns, but he's in his pajamas.
Mhm.
So he looks like a big 3-year-old. It's
Cowboy boots, pajamas, and a cape, right?
But he's shooting his guns at the mummy. And then as the mummy disappears out the door, Kimosabi has a heart attack and he dies and drops right there in the hall. Jack and Elvis get questioned by the staff what happened. And of course they lie so that they don't look like they're nuts. It's just a heartbreaking scene because I love that little tiny bit we get with Kimosabi. You just fall in love with him.
Yeah. And you feel so sorry for him when you see this happen. You realize what Elvis and Jack are realizing is this place is the perfect hunting ground for a creature like that because people drop like flies every day. Nobody's going to give a shit or investigate things or notice that people seem to be dying at an unusual rate when they die every day anyway. So it's the
That's
perfect
true.
hunting ground. And they know that. And they are smart enough to know people will think they're crazy if they talk about it. That tells you they really are Elvis and JFK. They have to be because they're smart enough to realize we shouldn't talk about what's really going on. To me,
Yep.
that solidifies it.
Yep.
They really are who they say they are, damn it. I'm going with it.
The next day, we see the two men loading Kimosabi into the hearse. And even though it's sad, I laugh every time because they drop him over the railing.
They try to brush it off when they accidentally fling him into the bushes. Oh my God. Like on the one hand, you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? That is a person. And then on the other hand, you're like, if that's what you do for a living, you probably have to detach yourself from it. But isn't that going a little far? Just chucked him into the bushes on accident and then try to hide it.
So then later outside, we see Elvis standing on the grounds, just having some quiet time. And his nurse comes to get him. I like that he says he's sick of her patronizing him and for her to fuck off. And she
Yes.
just kind of throws her hands up and goes back inside.
Because that's exactly what I was thinking. Like from minute one is the way that he gets condescended to, talked about like he's not in the room, the way she's patronizing him all the time. Like
And this is
you
his
want to tell
moment.
that bitch off. And he tells her,
Yeah.
hell yeah.
So while outside, Elvis decides to take a stroll down over by the river where there's a bridge. And this always makes me laugh too. He's got that walker and he's trying to get down the hill. You know, in your mind, Bruce Campbell's not so elderly, he can't do that. But it's still fucking sad too to watch him stumble all the way down the hill.
Yeah, it's equal parts slapsticky and funny, and then also heartbreaking and sad because you're believing him so much. It's like, I'm so confused by this performance. And I get why a lot of people did not care for this movie, like audience wise, because it takes a certain kind of person to be able to take both those things at once. To laugh your ass off at him, the sight of him trying to navigate the hill with the walker, and then also feel incredibly heartbroken for him. To feel both those things at once is very confusing.
So he makes it down to the water in one piece and he sees part of the bus and a license plate in the water, confirming that that is probably where the mummy crashed. And that's where his sarcophagus is. And that explains why he is at their rest home.
Yeah. And that the visions he had coming in telepathically are accurate because now they match what he's physically seeing.
He goes back to his room and he lies down because that took a lot out of him. And he begins to ponder life again, as this movie does with him in voiceover, which I really enjoy. He's talking about his regrets, but then he gets interrupted by Jack, who has done some research. And I love, again, he's in this crisp suit looking very sharp. And he says, the woman that calls herself my niece, I had her take me into town to the library.
Because he is so 1,000% all in on the fact that he really is JFK. And if he is, he would have had to accept a long time ago that he has a fake surrogate family.
Right?
Oh, man.
So Jack presents some of his research findings to Elvis, and he found out about the mummy. He tells Elvis he indeed was traveling, and some thieves on a silver bus stole it and crashed it here in East Texas. Jack says he's probably going to sleep now because the mummy comes at night and he wants to be ready. Elvis decides he wants to be a hero in real life for once instead of just in the movies. He calls Jack's room and he tells him they're going to kill them a mummy tonight. And I remember the first time I saw this, I was at a theater with a bunch of people and everyone went, yeah!
Yes.
Such a good moment.
Little Elvis and his walker and JFK, who can barely walk at all, are going to take on this cowboy Bubba Ho-Tep mummy thing. Okay, this is exactly what I expected based on the trailer. And that's what we're about to see. Yes, you get so pumped in this moment. But then also, you're so in love with both of these men and you're believing who they are. And you feel so sad for Elvis, especially because it's like his motivation for wanting to do this. Oh my God, it's heartbreaking. He didn't devote enough of himself to love and his family and caring for people. He was concerned about fame and money. And now he's trying to fix that at the end of his life. And you're like, I actually really believe all that. And I'm really sad.
You're in on it and you feel
You're
like
so in.
you want that redemption for him.
And you just don't expect to have that emotional connection in such a ridiculous movie.
So later that night, Elvis and Jack go over their supply checklist, complete with uniforms, quote unquote, and a freshly oiled wheelchair.
So important.
Oh, I love the uniforms. So it makes you wonder too, his Elvis's uniform is, like a white flashy costume he would have worn on stage with the cape and everything. And it's like, where did you get this if you're not an Elvis? I mean, because he was an impersonator.
Yeah.
I guess he saved it.
That's the thing, is with both of these men, everything about them that supports that they really are Elvis and JFK could also be explained completely logically with the alternative.
True.
So you never know for sure either way, because it's believable both ways.
So Jack says he's got some words of magic from that book he got earlier that are supposed to ward off evil.
Oh, God.
And he's confident that fire cleanses evil. So they're going to do that as well. They decide to synchronize their watches and they will head out at 2:30 a.m. Why they picked that time, I don't know, but it sounds good, I guess. So cut to 2:30 and the men in uniform do an amazing walk in this hall. First, Jack comes around that corner in his chair and then Elvis just comes out in his walker and you get that moment with the music, the triumphant music, and they're starting to walk down the hall. Fucking love it.
Like I said, who can work a hallway like this director? I mean, come on. How amazing and triumphant and iconic is this moment? Yeah, Jack, he's like riding on rails in that freshly oiled chair, right? And then
His
Elvis
crisp
is,
suit, yeah.
Yeah, Elvis in his, kung fu 70s era glory with the walker, and he's got just a little more pep in his step than we've seen him have before, because it's like these two men they're feeling their oats, I guess would be the perfect description. They are so feeling it. And it's like,
Yes.
Suddenly you're like, okay, this is what the outfits are all about, because they put on those outfits and it becomes armor. They have confidence now.
Look at
Like
you.
they're
Yes.
in full drag, right? Like go forth and kill yourselves a mummy.
So they sneak out the front door and then outside they top off their little makeshift flamethrower that they got from the gardener with some gas that Elvis stole from the shed. And before they head off, Elvis asks Jack, Elvis assumes that, they're probably not going to make it out of the night alive. So he wants to know this one last thing. So he asks Jack, what was Marilyn Monroe really like in bed? I love that so much.
I love Jack's response.
It was something about he jokes and says, I can't tell you or I'd have to kill you, or it's top secret or something like
Yeah,
that.
classified information.
Classified information. There you go.
Yep. But then he throws in a confirmation after that. Absolutely, I nailed her and she was fantastic. Like, I can't remember the exact line, but he just lets Elvis know, oh, I boinked the hell out of her. And it was great.
So Elvis and Jack wait outside in their front yard area, kind of where the top of that hill would be. And they wait, and Bubba Ho-Tep is going to come out of that creek bed. A minute later, he approaches, but then as he's walking toward them, he disappears. Suddenly, the mummy jumps out from behind a tree and attacks Elvis, knocking him to the ground. Jack comes over in his chair, and the mummy just leaves. I guess he decides he's not going to bother with these two fools because he's not there for them. You know?
There's such that amazing moment where the mummy walks behind a tree and just vanishes and then reappears. And again, the director, like, he just understands visually how to make things look really creepy and cool. And you're doing it on such a small budget, like effects wise, there's not much money to go into doing that. That is such a creepy moment. The way he walks behind a tree and is just gone. Like, what the fuck? It's so simple, but it's creepy as hell. And then I love when Elvis is going to attempt to try to fight the mummy with his kung fu for a minute there. And you just hear his bones cracking and snapping.
When he does the kick and his hip is like crackle.
Crack. Oh my God. Like, I feel you, boo-boo. Same.
So Jack cruises along in his chair to try and track the mummy, and he gets jumped from behind and knocked to the ground. Elvis hops into Jack's rogue chair because it's already in motion and heads right for that mummy. The mummy gets up and he says something in Egyptian, and we see it in hieroglyphs on the screen. That cracks me up.
I fucking love the speaking in the hieroglyphics, and then it translates. It's so extra. It's so funny, and it does not. One of the things he says was, eat the dog dick of Anubis, you asswipe. Oh my God, it's so funny.
So Elvis sets the mummy on fire and sends him walking away, and he falls to the ground and he's burning. And then he sits with Jack on the ground as Jack passes away, and he calls him Mr. President. And it's both sad and funny because you're like, what are these fools doing? Like, this is ridiculous. And then it's like, oh, but you're done now, you know?
Looking at like what I know about the filmmaker as far as what he put into the screenplay and when he was deciding to make this movie, it's like, okay, understanding how he works, there's clearly a lot of metaphor happening, right? And you realize that the whole point of this was this brought them both back to life. It gave them a purpose. It gave them something to unite over. It gave them something that made them feel relevant and important and strong and youthful again. And they know damn well they're going to go out there and they're not going to put up much of a fight, and they're both going to die, but that's how they want to go. They want to go out feeling alive and feeling like they have a purpose. And that's exactly what happens. And so suddenly at the end of this movie, this absurd fight shit is happening, and the wheelchair and all of it is so funny. And then I literally burst into tears every time. Every time Jack dies and Elvis calls him Mr. President, I burst into full on tears. That's how much this movie gets me.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's the same for me. And that to me is a hallmark. It's just signature of a great film. It's just a good movie. So Elvis gets up and he starts reciting those words that Jack wrote from the Book of Souls that's supposed to ward off evil.
And this is when you're taken out of how real and sad this is, and you suddenly are laughing again because this is insane. Oh my God.
So it was just something ridiculous that doesn't seem like it would do anything. And it doesn't, because the mummy gets right back up.
It's basically just like common sense, layman's terms. You're a demon and go away. And then Elvis is like, it doesn't even rhyme. Like, what the hell is that? Like, this is no Tenacious D moment, from whence you came, you shall remain. None of that. It's so unpoetic and stupid sounding. Anyone could have made it up, basically.
Yes, and it doesn't work. Like I said, the mummy just gets right back up and says something to him, which translates to what you said. It's eat the dog dick of Anubis, you asswipe.
It's my favorite one.
Elvis heads straight for the mummy in that chair, and the mummy falls on him, kind of jumps on him, and they fist fight in that chair as it goes tumbling over the edge and down the hillside, down to that water's edge. I watched, like I said, the behind the scenes stuff, and that is a dummy as Elvis, and that is the amazing Bob Ivy playing the mummy. And
Mhm.
he did that stunt. He went down that hill in that wheelchair, fist fighting a dummy. He's amazing.
Yeah, when you don't have a ton of money for visual effects, you have to do everything practically. So I love that. Like, oh my God, I hope he got his pay that day because that looks scary as hell. That looks dangerous.
And then the mummy, when they get to the bottom, clubs Elvis with a stick and hits him in the head. And you can see Elvis has like a rib that broke and is poking out his side. Elvis releases the gasoline that's on the ground there, and he starts to ponder that he's going to die, and at least he has his soul. He's not going to let the mummy take his soul. And it gives him that little last burst of energy that he needs. He's like, the mummy's not going to get it, you know? So he punches that mummy and then lights him on fire. And again, Bob Ivy, God bless him, did the stunt. They lit that man from head to toe on fire, and he has to fall into that creek, and it looks phenomenal in the film. But the mummy catches fire and falls into the creek. Elvis lays there injured. And my question was, in this whole movie, which is completely 100% ridiculous, okay? My logic question is, if the fire's killing the mummy now, why didn't the fire kill him half an hour ago? What's the difference?
Maybe
Whatever.
it's just, it's the level of fire. This is a lot more fire.
More
And
fiery fire.
it's directly on his body. He is on fire, not a building, not a room. He is on fire very, very much. It's lots of much fire. But I love the whole idea that it wasn't some magic words or some magic spell. It's actually just, it was common sense thinking on Jack's part that kill it with fire probably would work. And then that's exactly what we're seeing. It's just a common sense thing that fire might work, and it does.
So Elvis is thinking to himself, at least he got to keep his soul to the end. And then he looks up as he's dying and he sees the stars in the sky align into some hieroglyphs that translate to all is well. So then we assume the mummy is definitely defeated at this point. And I like that he says, thank you very much again, and then dies. Fade to black,
And
roll credits.
yeah, I once again burst into tears every time Elvis dies when he sees the message and then he dies, because I'm like, oh, you sneaky man, you screenwriter and filmmaker, because I get it. He kept his soul, which was the whole point. Both he and Jack did. What it was they both took ownership over their fate and themselves and who they are as a man as they went into their death. They knew they felt like they did the right thing and they belonged to themselves. They weren't wasting away and
Helpless.
forgotten. Yeah. So then when he sees all is well, and it's like, that's what he needs to die peacefully, is knowing everything is going to be okay. Your daughter's out there somewhere. Your ex-wife's out there somewhere. They have love for you. Everything's going to be okay. The world's going to be better because you were in it. You can go now. That's
also,
what he needed.
You saved everybody else now who's left from the mummy.
Exactly.
Which
They
I
made
gave him
sure-
that purpose. Yeah.
They made sure that no one else will lose their soul. Like it just makes me burst into tears every time. I love it so much.
And then I immediately go to giggling because when the credits start to roll, there's hieroglyphs in the credits too. It's so cool. It's
I
really
know.
so cool.
It is.
All right. So I've got 3 questions for you. Number 1, would you be interested in seeing a sequel or prequel if they can ever get it made? Because there's been a movie in development for ages that never got made called Bubba Nosferatu.
Mhm.
And I found out from the director, an interview with him, that they didn't ever follow up and make it because it was going to be a joke movie, like a full-on joke movie. But after he saw the reception and love that this movie got, he didn't want to do that to diminish this movie, Bubba Ho-Tep. But so my question being broad, because there's also something in the world that exists that I found out called Bubba and the Cosmic Bloodsuckers comic series. It's like a 5-part series, which talks about young Elvis fighting cosmic alien vampires or something.
Now, who created that? Did you find out?
I didn't write down the creator, but it's probably the guy, Joe Lansdale, who wrote Bubba Ho-Tep. I mean, how could
Right.
it not be? Or at least he's involved. But so my question is, there is stuff that's been talked about. There is stuff that exists. Would it ever be fun, whether Bruce Campbell's in it or not, prequel or sequel? Would it be fun to see something else in the Bubba world, or are we good?
I would totally love it. It would end up, again, having to be kind of like the Phantasm series, where it's like we're making subsequent movies in this world for the fans. So it doesn't have to be high budget. It doesn't have to be high concept. You could even not have Bruce Campbell. And I would be here for it because I enjoy whatever's coming out of this man's brain. I'm here for it. So yes, please. I would love to see more Bubba anything.
I
Yes.
agree with you. I love the way Coscarelli's brain works on that
Yes.
visual level. He makes
Yeah.
great stuff to watch, and I want him to make more of it.
Yeah. And it's for a particular type of person. And I happen to be exactly that kind of person. And so are you. Like, there's a certain type of person who enjoys this guy as a filmmaker so much. And that's what those movies would be for, is for those people. Make it. Let's get it. Bubba.
So question 2, do you think the mummy stayed dead? I mean, they did try to kill him twice with fire. I mean, we got the message that said all is well, but do you think he stayed dead?
Yeah, but I think there was probably another one because there are many. So he can't just be a one-off. You could totally have a completely different type of hospital. It could be a hospice for young people who are on their deathbeds. Any of these soul, demon ass sucking things, these mummies would pick on people who are on their deathbed because they're easy targets, right?
Hollywood, are you listening? Nikki Flicks is onto something here. All right. Question 3, who is your favorite Elvis portrayal on film or TV, not counting Elvis himself? I haven't seen enough to have an opinion, so of course I'm going to say Bruce here. But my husband did say his favorite was Kurt Russell in the 1979 TV movie Elvis, directed by John Carpenter.
Oh, I mentioned it earlier. Yeah, Kurt Russell as Elvis, he's wonderfully brilliant. You can't say enough good things about his portrayal of Elvis. He did the same thing Bruce Campbell did, which was you take this person who is an icon of mythic proportions and you are able to turn them into a real living and breathing human being. And Kurt Russell is the only other actor besides Bruce Campbell I've seen do it. So
Okay.
it's a tie. It's between Bruce Campbell here and Kurt Russell.
Well, I didn't see that TV movie, but from the pictures that I did see online, he plays a young Elvis for a lot of it. And he looked like him. So I'm willing to bet we can give young Elvis to Kurt and elderly Elvis to Bruce and call it good.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
All right, that's going to wrap up Bubba Ho-Tep for us today. If anyone's interested in watching this amazing motion picture, it is currently free on Pluto TV or pay on Amazon Prime. I want to thank my co-host for joining me, Miss Nikki Flicks, and we want to thank all of you for continuing to listen to us. We appreciate your support, and until next time, goodbye.
Gonna go have myself a peanut butter and nana sandwich.
Hey listeners, Movie Miss here. Listen, I know you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, so thank you for listening to the show. I know everybody says this, but for a fledgling little show like ours that's just hanging on, we just finished season 4, we're rolling into season 5, it would really help us if you could subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Good Pods. We're also on Pandora, Audible, Amazon Music. It would really help us grow the show and reach more people if you could subscribe and then rate and review, which is really the key part of it. Make sure to be part of our Bad Movie conversation by following us on social media. Interact with me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Movie Miss, which is movie_miss. The show is on Instagram at Let's Talk Turkeys. Also on Blue Sky at Let's Talk Turkeys and Facebook. We're on X. I'm honestly not sure how much longer I'm going to have the show on there, but currently the handle is at Gobble Podcast. Get it? Gobble, 'cause like a turkey. You can also chat with like-minded bad movie lovers in our Facebook discussion group. And like I mentioned, we're rolling into season 5. It is 2025. The show, it's been a wild ride, still going strong. So if you have a movie that you would like to hear covered on the show, let me know by emailing direct at letstalkturkeys, all one word, at yahoo.com. Also, hit me up on socials if you want to be a guest on the show. Always looking for guests. I can assign you a movie, something we think is fun, or you can bring a movie that you think is a bad movie if it has a low Rotten Tomatoes score, or you just really don't like the movie, but you like to talk about it. That's half the fun, I think. Again, this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. Without you, the show wouldn't still be kicking around. So thank you so much for hanging in there with us.
I'll be back.
Get the fuck out of here. No, I cannot.
Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Why don't you get the fuck out of here? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go. Good